Hi guys, welcome to this new video on JavaScript. This video is very important because I'll talk about different concepts, how we can build the logic, how we can build algorithms, how we can solve different kinds of problems. It can be the real life problems, it can be the mathematical problems. So these are the different questions that I have chosen. These problems are very important and I have actually written down these problems so that you can become a good programmer, mainly in JavaScript, how we can use nested loops, manipulate arrays, manipulate objects, and the different stuff. On the right side, I'm showing my playlist on JavaScript, which I've already created. Along with this video, I would recommend you guys to go check out my JavaScript playlist and watch these other videos which I have created. Those concepts are very important as well. I would recommend you to watch my video on top tips and tricks in JavaScript and also concepts you must know in JavaScript. These two videos are very important. Along with this, you can watch other videos as well, like the object-oriented programming in JavaScript, build snake game in JavaScript, build quiz application in JavaScript, and the other videos as well. So let's get started in this video. These are the questions which I have written down over here, and these questions are does not seem practical or might be you might be thinking that what is the use of building these kinds of shapes in real life applications, but these problems will help you how you can use loops, arrays, nested loops, if and statements, and you can practice using those concepts of JavaScript programming by solving these small problems. Alright, so first of all, I've created this new file shapes.js, and in this file I'll be building these shapes. So let's get started and try to print out this first triangle of numbers. We can actually print this triangle of numbers using simple print statements or console log statements, but I won't be using that because the purpose of this video is to explain you guys and practice that how we can use loops and nested loops, arrays, objects, manipulations, and much more. Okay, so first of all, you can see that we have these 6 rows and the 6 columns, but the columns values are incrementing by 1 because in the first row we have 1 1 and then 1 2 1 2 3 up to 1 2 3 4 5 6. Okay, so what I'm thinking is whenever the cursor comes to the next line, it cannot go up. Okay, and there are number of rows. Currently there are 6 rows, so I'll be initializing a new loop, and I'll start off that loop by 1 up to 6 because we have 6 rows over here. So I'll start off with for let I equals to 0 less than equals to 6 and then I plus plus. Okay, this loop representing the number of rows needs to be printed. Okay, and then I'll be initializing another nested loop inside it, and that loop will be responsible to print the values inside this. Okay, so here first of all let me create a new variable. Okay, this variable is going to contain the values which needs to be printed, and I will be actually concatenating these values in a single row. When the row finishes, then I will print each row one by one, because the way our console window or the terminal window works is that whenever the cursor comes down, it cannot go up. So we have to print everything, whatever we want to print in a single row. All right. So here I'm going to create another loop. Let j equals to, I'm going to start off with 1. Let make the I equals to 1 as well. So j equals to 1, and then I want to end my this loop up to I and then j plus plus. Okay, so the reason I'm ending it by I, there is because we have I starting off with 1. Okay, and this loop is responsible for printing the values. In the first row we have to print only 1. In the second row we have to print 1 2. Okay, it is starting by 1 and then it will end to the value of I. So first time the value of I will be 1, the second time value of I will be 2, the third time value of I will be 3, because we are incrementing it by I plus 1. Okay, so here we will be keep on printing it up to 1 2 3 4 5 6. Okay, so here in this loop I will be actually concatenating it with pattern by j. Okay, and then after this loop we are going to print console log pattern. let me run this file. So I'm going to write node shapes.js, and here you can see that it has actually printed out this triangle, first one. So this one is getting printed because of this loop, because it ran only once. So how it's actually running, this is the first program. So I'll try to explain each and every point that how loops work. So first of all, what happens is the JavaScript is going to read let I equals to 1. Okay, and if it is equals to 1, then it's going to check that if I is less than equals to 6 or not. So 1 is less than equals to 6. It is true condition. If it is true condition, then it's going to come inside the body of this for loop. Okay, so first of all, I is equals to 1 and 1 is less than 6, so it's true. It's going to execute this new variable and create this variable, and then it's going to execute this loop. It's going to initialize j by 1, and it's going to check if j, which is equals to 1, is less than or equals to I or not. So first of all, I is equals to 1, so j is equals to 1 as well. Then j 1 is equals to 1. It is true. So first of all, the pattern, if you know how the string works, the first of all, this string is empty. So it will be concatenating with the value of j. So the value of j is 1 here. So the 1 will be stored in this pattern. Then what it will do is it will go and increment the value of j. And when it will increment the value of j, it's going to check this condition. So j is less than or equals to 1. J equals to 2, but I still is equals to 1. So 2 is not less than I, and 2 is also not equals to 1. So this condition is not true. So it means that loop ends here. And after it ends, you remember that patterns contains 1, because empty array plus 1 equals to 1. So that's why first time it is going to print 1 in the first row, and the console log statement automatically bring the cursor to the next line. So we need to care about that in JavaScript, that whenever this gets printed, it will be bringing cursor to the next line. All right, and next, once it will get printed, we are still in the parent loop. It will go and increment the value of I by 1. So the I becomes 2. So 2 is less than 6. It is true. This condition gets true, then it's going to execute the same logic again, and in this time the j will be initialized again, because the execution program have gone outside this loop, and then again this whole loop is getting executed. Whenever the loop gets executed from outside again, then the value of its variable initialized again. Okay, so then j is equals to 1 and I is equals to 2. So it means that the j first time will be 1. So this pattern will contain 1, and that when the j will become 2, the 2 less than equals to 2 will also gets true, because 2 is equals to 2 as well. So then the pattern was containing 1, and the 1 plus 1 will become 1 2, because it is a string, and the string plus integer becomes a string. So that's why in the second row it will become 1 2, and the console log is going to bring the cursor down for the third row, and the same kind of logic is going to be printed until and unless this I is going to become 7. When it will become 7, the 7 is not equals to 6, and 7 is also not less than 6. Okay, so when it will be false, then the program will end. It will come outside this loop. So this is how the logic I have built in this program to create this awesome triangle of numbers. So the purpose of building this awesome triangle of numbers was to understand how the loops and the nested loops work in JavaScript. Now let's comment this code which we have written, and I'm going to print out the next pattern, and you can see that the first triangle is equals to the first one which we have already created. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this code which I've already written. Let's uncomment this, and after each row we have these asterisk needs to be printed, and it is the triangle in the reverse order. We have these 5 asterisks, 4 3 2 1, and then the first triangle. So we cannot do like first we print this triangle and then we print the rest of triangle. The reason is that when the first triangle is going to get printed and after that we print this triangle, the next steric triangle is going to printed in the next rows of this terminal. Okay, so we have to manage it before actually we print this console statement. All right, so first of all, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to create another loop after this, because here we are printing and this console log statement is going to bring the cursor to the next line. So before the cursor moves to the next line, we have to append this pattern variable with the asterisk as well. Okay, so here what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another loop for, and let k equals to I, and then k is less than 6. Okay, k plus plus, and here I'm going to append pattern by static. Let me first print this out. If it works, then I'll explain you why I have written down this logic over here. So I'm going to run it. Here you can see that it has actually printed what we wanted here. And this loop, what actually doing is, so what I'm thinking is the I value was 1 initially, okay, and I have initialized k by 1, okay, and I have ended it with this 6. Okay, so first of all, 1 up to 6 is equals to 5. Okay, because it's not equals to 6, it's less than 6. Okay, so I wanted to print the static 5 times. That's why I have first initialized it by I and ending it with the 6, because I want this loop to run 5 times first time. Whenever the I value is going to get increased, this loop is going to get executed 4 times, and the third time the I value will be increased, so 3 to 5 becomes 3, and at the end when it will become 6, it will not be true, and then it will not print anything over here. Okay, so I am building this particular variable for each row, appending 1 and the number of asterisks, and at the end this pattern is going to take the values which are being shown on each row. Okay, and then this variable is going to get initialized again, then this pattern is going to get printed, and here it's going to come to the next line, and it's going to end whenever this I becomes 6 or actually 7, then the program will end and this shape is going to get printed. So let's not try to print this shape now. It's pretty much same to this, but in reverse order. You can ignore the spaces between these. Okay, so first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy paste the logic which I've already written. So because I want to modify it in order to convert it in this format which is shown over here. Okay, so first of all, if you know that first in the previous program we had to print 1 1 2 1 2 3, but in this program we need to first print the numbers to the end up to 5 and only print and only one time. You can consider it the static, but just focus on the number of times these needs to get printed. Okay, so first of all, what I'm gonna do is this loop, first loop needs to be executed 6 times. So because there are 5 rows, so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to execute this loop 5 times. So I'm going to first make it 5, and I'm going to make it greater than equals to 1, and it needs to be decremented. Okay, because I'm building the logic, so this is how I'm thinking currently, because this loop will execute 5 times, 5 4 3 2 1, and when it will become 0, the program will end. Okay, and then I have actually initialized this pattern variable, so this loop actually needs to get executed 5 times, because I'm actually printing 1 2 3 4 5 times. Next time it needs to get printed 4 times. Okay, so if it executes 1 up to I, so the first time it will execute 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, so it will be executed 5 times, and it's going to concatenate the string with the 1. So I think this loop is pretty much right, and I don't need to modify it anything. And then this loop needs to get executed 1 time first time, and then 2 times second time here, and the 3 times third time. Okay, so let's see, the first time the I is equals to 5 and the k is equals to 5. Okay, and then the k5 is less than 6, so it will be executed 1 time. Okay, so then in the second time it will be executed 2 times, because the I will become 4. So 4 is less than 6, and then the 5 is going to be less than 6. Okay, so let's change this static to and let's try to run this program what it prints. All right, so it works well. We have this printed, and it's pretty much same as this triangle which we have to print. So I hope that you have understood what is the purpose of using these values within this loop, and what is the purpose of how these internal nested loops are being executed in JavaScript. Let's now try to build this shape. It looks hard, but it's not that much hard. We will be actually making the first loop up to 6 or 7 times, and then we need to build an empty triangle within this triangle. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, let me comment this out, and I'm going to paste that same code which I've written above. So here, first of all, what I'm gonna do is I don't need 2 loops, because we don't have the 2 triangles here. Just like the previous programs, we only have 1 triangle which is of the empty spaces. Okay, so here it's going to execute from 1 up to 7 rows. So I'm going to give it the value less than equals to 6, so it will be the 6 rows. Okay, if we know that 1 2 3 1 2 3, we can separately print out this row. We don't need to handle this in this loop, but we only have to handle this one at the start. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to initialize the variable, and in this loop, it's going to start up with 1 up to I j plus plus. I don't need to actually make changes in this loop, but here in the body of this nested loop, I'm going to check if j equals to I, or I equals to 1, or j equals to 1. Okay, if this condition gets true, I'm going to append pattern with this @ sign. Okay, because this condition is actually verifying we are actually at the border of that triangle or not. Otherwise, I'm going to append pattern with an empty space. Okay, then I can actually save it. Let's try to run this program. So it has not printed anything. It has gone into an infinite loop. So what is the problem here? So I less than 6, actually we have to add I plus plus over here, because I want this value to be incremented up to 6 times, and then I, then j plus plus. All right, it will work fine now. So if I run this file, you can see that here it has actually printed out the same format which we have in this file. Now we can separately print out this line. It is not that difficult. It is not a shape. So outside this loop, we can separately print out this in a console log statement. Okay. All right, let's try to run this. Now you can see that the same format have been printed, which is shown in this file. Now let's print this. It seems not that easy, but let me tell you that it require only 1 loop and only the 2-3 lines of code to print this pattern. You can see that it is starting from 1 to 3 up to 10, and then 11, 12 to 20, and then in the third column from bottom to top the values are incrementing. Okay, it's not like that we can have the 3 loops. We can start off printing the first column, and then the second column, then the third column. Make sure that remember, when the cursor comes down to the next line, it cannot go up. So we first have to print this whole row first of all, then second row, then third row. Okay, it means that we can define the 3 variables. We can decrement the first variable by 1, we can increment the second variable by 1, and then the decrement the third variable by 1 again up to the 10 times. Okay, so here let me comment this code, And the reason I've included this question is to show you the different variation of loop that we can actually initialize at the conditions and increment decrement that multiple variables in a single loop. Okay, so here I'm going to initialize my loop. Let I equals to 1. Let me check. I equals to 10. So I will start off with the 10. And then by comma, I don't need to write the semicolon. I can add the comma and I can initialize the second variable. So I will give it the j equals to 11 and then comma, then k equals to 30. Okay, let me verify if these are the initial values 10, 11, 30. Yes. And then we can add the condition. So let's say that we have the 10 and the 1. So we can have the I is greater than 1, comma, and then j is less than 21, less than equals to 20. Let's add less than equals to 20 and greater than equals to 1 because we want this to go up to the 1. We want 11 to go up to the 20. Okay, so that's why I've written the greater than equals to 1 and the less than equals to 20 because this 11 needs to be incremented but this 10 needs to be decremented. And lastly we have the k, and I know that the k needs to be decremented, so I will stop this k condition up to greater than equals to 20. Okay, then semicolon, and at the end I can use the comma separated increment and decrement. So I can write the I minus minus, comma, j plus plus because j needs to be incremented, then k minus minus. All right, and then inside this for loop I'm going to actually print all of these values. So I can write the console.log I plus and then the space, let's add the couple of spaces, then plus j plus and then couple of spaces and then plus k. Okay, this is used to concatenate that string. So let's save this file and I'm going to print this out. Alright guys, so now you can see that first this row was printed and this whole program execution actually stopped when this condition got stopped. Okay, so it was pretty simple. The purpose was to actually show you how we can actually initialize multiple variables, multiple conditions, and add the multiple increment decrement within a single for loop in JavaScript. Alright, so this is the next program, and assume that this is the number of width and then the number of columns. So the width is equals to 3 and the height equals to 4. So let's assume that the user have the form on a website. I don't want to include an HTML here, but I want to increase the width and height of this shape dynamically based upon the value given by the user. But currently the user is us and we will be actually dynamically changing the values of this. All right, so I will be first initializing few variables based upon the how many columns should be here and how many rows should be here, means that the width and the height. Okay, so first of all I'm going to initialize a variable here, const w width equals to 3, let's say equals to 3, and then const height equals to 4. Okay, then I want to print any character, currently it is capital B, with these variables. It can be the width of 3, and I want to build up a program that if we change its values, the width and height of this shape should be changed as well. Okay, so I'm going to add a for loop. Let I equals to 0 and then I is less than height and then I plus plus. Okay, you remember from the previous program that the first loop I include because of the number of the columns, number of the rows actually. So currently the rows are being handled because of this height. So that's why I'm starting off with this loop 0 up to the height. So 0 to 3 equals to 4. Then this height should be added over here in the condition of this for loop. Okay, so let's try to create another variable row which I want to append with the values which I want to print, and then in the nested loop I want to actually add it with the width variable which I have added over here. Okay, so in this loop I want to append the row we can actually use this notation plus equals to, it is same as this pattern. Okay, and if we write this plus equals to, it means that the row equals to row plus b. Okay, uh, after this loop ends, I want to actually print out that row variable. All right, so I hope that it will work fine. Let's try to run this file. It has actually thrown an error, so what's wrong with it? So we have this loop, and it should be j actually, not the I is the variable of the first loop. Okay, now let's run this file, and now you can see that it has printed this shape. Let's try to change the values of this. Let's try to change the width up to 10, and let's see if it changes the shape as well or not. So if I run it, you can see that it has increased the width up to the 10 columns, and the height remains the fourth rows. So it's looking pretty good, and we are actually done with printing out this shape with the dynamic values, which we can assume given by any user who is using and running this program. Let's try to solve these problems now. So the first problem is develop a program that inputs 10 different integers within a loop and display the largest and the smallest value. Input means that we have to assume if the user wants to enter the different values within a form or within the prompt, we need to fetch those values. We need to actually detect which value is the largest from that list and which value is the smallest. Okay, so for that I'll be creating a new file, and I'm going to first name this file programs.js, and I want to load this JS file in an HTML file. So I'll be writing the index.html. Okay, so in this file, let's quickly add an HTML here. Okay, and then I will be adding the body, and inside the body I will be adding that script which I have created. So type equals to text, and then the source equals to programs.js. It should be programs like this. Okay, and if you want, you can add the head and the title as well. This is just a formality. And now if I run this HTML file, this program.js file is going to get executed. The reason I've actually added this HTML because I want to input the value from the user using the prompt function of the JavaScript, and that prompt is only going to be visible on the browser, not in the terminal of this VS Code. Okay, so here I have actually created this, and now let's try to copy this line. This is the main program, and below this, first of all, I need to get the value from the user, and there is a function prompt. I'm going to give the value get prompt, and then I'm going to add the prompt enter integers from 1 to enter 10 integers, 10 comma separated integers. Okay, I will split these out using the comma. Okay, so let's first save it, and I'm going to actually run this HTML file. I'm using the live server extension of VS Code. It gives me an option to run it on the browser. So open with live server, it's going to create a new server and it's going to load it up. So you can see that whenever this is going to get executed, this script, it's going to prompt us that enter 10 comma separated integers. Currently we have not written anything. I just want to test that whether it shows the prompt or not. Okay, so then let's try to actually vals and then get values dot split by comma. Okay, and then the vals variable is going to take all of these values which will be printing over here. So let's try to print this out and see if it's actually printing the right values in the form of array or not. Okay, so let's try to refresh, and now I'm going to add different values here. Close, let's refresh, and here you can see that 1 comma 2 anything, any values I can print. It can be more than 10 as well, because I'll be building the dynamic loop to actually fetch the largest and the smallest value from this list. But let's click OK. Let's go to the console. And here you can see that there were 13 values, and it has actually converted this all of these values into this array, and it's looking cool. Now let's try to build the logic. I'm going to create a for loop. Let I equals to 1, and then the I is less than equals to was length, and this loop is going to be executed. And first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create couple of variables. So I'm going to write the largest equals to vals 0, and then the smallest is vals 0. So before actually I have actually figured out that which value is the largest and smallest, I'm assuming that initially I'm initializing these variables with the largest and smallest, whatever the value is in the first index of this array. Okay, and then in this loop I'm going to find out that which value is largest and which value is the smallest. So first of all, I'm going to write if a vals I is greater than largest, then I'm going to update this variable. Okay, otherwise it will keep on containing the value which I have first initialized it, and the first value was that on the first index of this array. Okay, but if the next values which are actually starting from the 1 index, you remember that the array starts with the 0 index. I am not starting with the 0 because I have already added the smallest and largest values of the 0th index of this vals array. Okay, I'm starting with 1, and if any of the next values are greater than the value which is already stored in this variable, okay, then I'm going to store it with the updated value. Now the largest is going to contain the largest value from that array. Okay, and the same logic I can add for the smallest as well. If the vals I is less than smallest, then I'm going to add the smallest vals I. Okay, after this program ends, if this condition gets true, then the largest and the smallest will have the updated values. So I'm going to print this out, the largest and then the smallest. All right, so let's try to save this file. The purpose of this live server in VS Code extension, whenever I save this file, it will be automatically updated in the browser. Okay, so here I'm going to add the multiple integer values. Okay, so these are all the values which I've added here, more than 10 as well. So I'll click OK. And here you can see that the smallest value was the 1. It has printed. Let me zoom in. And the largest value is this. Okay, so I think that it has actually calculated the right values for the largest and the smallest, and I hope that you have understood the logic which I have written for this problem. Now what is the next program? Write a program that asks the base and the exponent the power from the user using the prompt, and print the result using the loop. Okay, so it means that if the base equals to 2 and the exponent equals to 3, then we need to multiply base the number of times the exponent value is. Okay, so I'm going to copy this line of program, and let's come here. Let's try to comment this above code, and this is our next program. All right, so in this program we need to actually take the value from that prompt, one for the base and other for the exponent. I've already shown you how we can fetch the values using this prompt, or you can build the form, but let's assume that I've already taken the values, and I'm going to initialize the values for the base and then the exponent. Okay, so I'm going to write the base equals to let's say 4, and then the const equals to exponent equals to 5. Okay, now we need to actually run the loop as much number of times as this exponent value is, and we need to multiply the base with the exponent number of times. All right, so I'm going to write the for let I equals to 1 and I less than equals to 5. Okay, so this loop is going to be executed up to 5 times. Actually we need to give the exponent value over here. Okay, I now need to build it empty. All right, so now I'm going to, let's try to create a variable outside let result equals to 1. I can't give it 0 because when I will multiply 4 with this result, it will become 0. So it will never increase than the 0, which is default. So I'm going to add the result equals to result multiply by base. Okay, so first of all, what happens is it will be 1 multiplied by 4. This result will contain 4. Next time when I becomes 2, it will check the condition, and the condition true, the result is equals to 4 actually initially. Then the 4 multiplied by 4 will become 8. Okay, and this 8 will be multiplied by the next value as much number of times as this exponent value is. Okay, so let's try to actually console log this. So console.log result, let's save it, and now you can see that it actually printed out this 1024. Let's try to change the values of it. Let's try to change the exponent to 10, and let's see what happens. And now you can see that these values are getting changed. This is how I have actually built this program and algorithm to solve this problem. So next problem is using for loop. Print the result of multiplication of all the odd numbers from 1 to 20 and the result of sum of all the even numbers from 1 to 100. Okay, so this program actually giving us some limitation that this should be the range of the values for finding the odd numbers and finding the sum of these numbers. Okay, so let's try to build this program, and let's try to copy this file. I'm going to comment the previous program. Let's try to save it over here. Okay, so here first of all I'm going to actually create some logic and algorithm to solve this problem. So I'm going to add odd variable. Let's add the 1. Initial value is the 1, and then I'm going to actually run a loop from 1 to 20. If we go through it, we need to find the odd numbers, then it needs to be from 1 to 20, and we need to find the multiplication of all the odd numbers between 1 to 20. Okay, so here I'm going to write the let I equals to 1 and the I less than equals to 20. Okay, then I can actually add odd multiply equals to I. Okay, but it's going to actually run 20 times. Let me tell you the problem it's going to have. It is odd actually. Okay, and then let's try to log this out, odd, and now you can see that this is the value it has printed, but this is not the right or correct solution for that. It is not actually multiplying all the odd numbers but including the even numbers as well. So here in I++ we can actually increment it by 2, by 3, by 5, or up to any number. It is actually incrementing it by 1. What we can do here, we can increment it by 2. So I plus equals to 2. So what will happen is, first of all, I equals to 1, which is odd. Okay, and then it is going to increment by 2. The I will become 3, and the increment by 2 will become 5. So every time this I will be incrementing by 2, the value will remain odd, because the initial value I have given to it is odd. Okay, now if I save it, this is the total multiplication result of the values of odd numbers between 1 to 20. Okay, so same logic I can do for the even numbers. Let's try to add the even. What it needs to be done, it needs to be the sum of all the even numbers between 1 to 100. Okay, so I'm not actually adding the 1 here, because for multiplication I could add this 1, because 1 multiplied by anything is going to be the same value, but the 0 should be added for sum. 1 should not be added, because 10 plus 1 will become 11, so the result will be wrong. Okay, so then we need to actually increment the loop up to 100, 1, and then the 100. Let's start off with the 2. I can start off with the 0, but 0 does not make anything change in the result. So let's start off with 2 and increment I by 2. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, it will remain even number. Okay, up to 100. Then I can actually plus equals to even plus equals to I, and then it's going to actually print the sum of all the even numbers between 1 to 100, and this is the result, and it's looking correct. And this is how we can solve and increment multiple values within the loop by any number of times. So the next problem is about prime number. We need to print yes if the number is prime and no if the number is not prime. We can take the value from the user using the prompt, but let's try to assume that the user have entered the value, but we can try running our program with different values. We need to build the logic so that it can dynamically work with any number of values we provide to it. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to actually initialize a number with a variable. So I'm going to add it let number equals to anything, and I can give it 34, which is not prime. This is just for testing. And then I'm going to actually create a variable is prime. First of all, let's try to assume that all the numbers are prime. We will be updating its value to false if the value is not prime. So let's try to run the for loop. Let I equals to, so what is prime number? Prime number is a number which is only divisible by 1 or itself. Okay, so we can actually start off with 2 and end it with the number. Okay, so this loop is actually going to be executed between the number from 1 up to the number which needs to be tested for the prime number or not. So 2 to 33. So we will actually be testing if the value 2 to 33 is actually divisible by any number which is stored in the I. Okay, so here I can actually check if the number mod 2 equals to 0. Not 2, it should be the I, because I will be incrementing. So if any of the number between 1 to 34 is divisible by any of the numbers stored in the I, it means that it is not a prime number. Okay, so I can actually store is prime equals to false, and then I can break up the for loop. Okay, so whenever I want the stop to execution of the for loop, even though this condition is not false, then I can use this keyword break. It will bring out the execution of the program outside this for loop. Okay, and after this loop I can check the variable is prime. If it is true, I can actually use the ternary operator. So let's try to log this. So is prime is true, then I can actually print that this is a prime number. Okay, we had to actually print yes. So let's try to follow up the problem. So then no. Okay, let's save this, and now you can see that it has printed no, because 34 is divisible by, I think, 2. It is divisible by other values as well, like the 17 as well. So let's try to change it to something like 37. Is it divisible? I'm not sure. So it has printed yes. So the 37 is a prime number. Let's try to change it to 5. And the 5 is a prime number as well. Let's try to change it to 13. Is 13 divisible by any number? Yes. It is a prime number. Let's try to change it to 12, and the 12 is divisible by 2. It is divisible by 3, 4, 6. So let's save, and now you can see it has printed no. So we have actually built the logic for finding the prime number, and I hope that you have understood the logic. So next problem is also about the prime number. So in this problem, we have to count all the prime numbers from 1 up to that number which is given by the user. Okay, so we have to actually count. We don't need to actually print yes or no. We don't need to print the which number is the prime or not. We have to print the number of prime numbers between 1 up to that number. Okay, so I will assume that you can fetch the value from the user using the form of HTML or from the prompt, but I will be actually updating the value directly in the program. All right, so I'll just comment this previous program, and here first of all I'm going to actually initialize few variables. So let's start off with let prime count equals to 0, and then let input number equals to 25. Okay, and I will be changing this value because I want to find the number of prime numbers between 1 up to this number. Okay, I've entered this its value myself directly. The purpose is to build up the logic to solve this problem. Okay, so here I'm going to start off with the for loop and let number equals to 2, and the same logic which I have written above. So then I will be entering the number is less than input number. Okay, and then the number plus plus. All right, so this loop is going to check if the number is prime or not. Actually, it's going to go through all the numbers between 1 up to that number. Then it's going to actually update the variable with the number of values should be added in this variable. So I'm going to actually create a variable is prime equals to true, assuming that this will be true and will be changing its value. Now in the nested loop, I'm actually going to check if the number, this number is prime or not. Actually, 2 up to 24, I need to check that the 2 starting of 2 up to 24, how many numbers between 2 and the 24 are primes or not. Okay, so this number is actually added as a variable in this for loop. Okay, so here I'm going to actually copy the code from above logic, because that logic is actually doing the same thing, finding out the number is a prime or not. So I'm actually going to go through I equals to 2, I less than number, then I plus plus, and this number is actually checking over here. So then number is divided by I equals to 0, then false. Okay, so it's doing the perfect logic, and then I'm actually going to check if is prime equals to true. Then I'm going to increment this prime count by 1, because I don't want to print if the number is prime or not. I just want to increment the count here. Okay, and after this program ends, I would like to print out that value to the prime count. Okay, so let's save it. And now you can see that there are 9 numbers between 1 and 25 which are prime. Let's try to actually decrease its value to check. Let's give it 5, and there are 2 values which are prime. So I think it has actually considered the 2 as well, because the 2 is only divisible by 1 and itself, so it is a prime, and the 3 is a prime as well. So it is working correct. Let's try to increment it by 9, and there are 4 values, I think 2, 3, 5 and 7. So these 4 values are the prime number. All right, that's why it has printed the total number of prime numbers between 1 to up to that number. I hope that you have understood it. If you have any question understanding the logic which I'm building, you can comment below of this video. And if these problems are helping you learning and understanding and becoming a better programmer, problem solver in the JavaScript, don't forget to subscribe my channel and hit the like button of this video. So we have 2 problems left which are about arrays. So the first problem is that we need to initialize 2 arrays, and we need to find the numbers which exists in both the arrays. So we need to actually find the common values in 2 arrays. Okay, so I'm gonna go in this file programs.js. Let's comment this out. Okay, and first of all I need to initialize 2 arrays. So I'm going to write const a equals to 1 2 3 4 5, okay, any number, and then b equals to 6 7 8 9 10. These can be any values, but for actually finding the common values we have to create loops. So then in order to show the common values, we will be having another let common numbers equals to empty array. This is the variable in which we will be storing the common values. Currently there are no common values, so it should left as an empty array using our logic which we are going to build. So first of all, I'll need to iterate through both of these arrays. It means that we need to iterate through multiple loops. Okay, actually the 2 loops which would be the nested. Okay, so I'm going to write let I equals to for let I equals to 0, and then I is less than a dot length, and then I plus plus. Okay, and then let's add another loop, let j equals to 0, and then j is less than b dot length, and then j plus plus. I'm going to check if the values are same. So ai equals to bj. If this is true, then I'm going to push the value in this common numbers array. So common numbers dot push I can fetch the value from A array or the B array because both the values will be same. So once that is done, I'm going to break this out. This is going to break and leave the execution of program from the internal loop, because this break only goes out from one loop only, okay, in which inside this. After this loop ends, I'm going to actually print out the common numbers. So I'm going to console log and then the common numbers. Okay, let's try to save this. You can see that it has printed an empty array because there are no values common inside it. Let's try to add new values 2, and here I'm going to add a 3. So 3 and 2 are the common values. Let's see if it actually adds over here. So let's save it, and you can see that 2 3 have been added in this array. So we are actually done with this program. And then last problem we have is about array as well. So let's try to see what it asks us to do. Initialize two array of integers, which we have done, and then you have to exchange the elements of the both array, and then array A should contain the elements of B, and the B should contains the element of A. All right. I would like to change this program a bit complex because I don't want to initialize a third array in which I want to store the values first and then swap these out. I will be doing it without actually initializing the another new variable for an array. Okay, so here first of all I will be actually initializing two arrays. Let's try to copy this from above, and for this I will make sure that both of these values, the length of both of these arrays should be same, because these should be swapped. If the values are not same in both of these arrays, the length is different, then the problem is not actually making sense. Then here I'm going to actually start off with a loop. So I will start off with the I equals to 0, I less than a dot length, and yes, I can actually use the B here or A because the both will be having the same length. All right, so here first of all I'm going to swap the values from one array to another array. So I'm going to create a variable temp, and inside it I'm actually storing the value, the first value, which is 1, in this temp variable, okay, for the reference. And then I'm going to actually store the first index value from the array B into the first index of the array A. Okay, so I'm going to write the actually B, this one. Okay, now we have actually moved this 6 into the first index of the array A. Now we need to bring the first value of the array A into the value of 6, but we have already stored the value of first A into the temp variable, which we can use. So I can write the bi equals to temp. Okay, so now let's try to print this out, and here let's try to print A and then B. Let's save it, and now you can see that this is the array A, first one, and it contains the value of this second array which I have initialized, and this is the second array which is storing the value of the first one. You can also test it by changing the values. Let's try to see. Let's save it, and now you can see that it has actually moved working with all the different values of this array. All right, so we are actually done with problem solving. We have actually practiced different problems for the arrays, nested loops, for different kinds of data manipulation using different variables. All right, so this is going to be very helpful to you guys. If you are building a large application, you can come across different problems which is not actually given in any built-in library like the math library, utils library. You have to build your own logic to solve those problems. That's why I have created this video to help you out so you can understand, practice different problem solving techniques, and help you and guide you how you can solve problems, build algorithms, build logic for your programs. All right, if you have liked my video, don't forget to subscribe my channel, hit the like button. And also in the upcoming video I will also be talking about a different recurrent problem. Recurrent is also a very important and one of the most difficult topic to understand. So I will talk about the recurrent practices in JavaScript. When you need to use callbacks, promises, async await, then recurrence comes very handy to solve different problems. See you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.